Hello, everyone. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me because I changed my settings. Hang on 1 second. I changed my settings on Facebook. So if you can hear me, please put a comment on the comment section, especially those on Facebook and YouTube. I know people on Instagram can hear me. Hi, how are you? Thank you guys for joining me. All right, so I have a really great topic for you guys today. And of course, as always, my topics are based on people who I've talked to in the past couple of weeks that they've had certain problems. Good morning, Atina. Sure, you can hear me. Thank you. What about people on Abraham? Can you hear me? You're on YouTube. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. I'm not sure he can hear me, but I'm just gonna introduce myself. And if you cannot hear me on Facebook or YouTube, come on over to Instagram because I did something funny with my settings on my computer. And so I am not sure if you can hear me on Facebook. Oh, you can hear me. Thank you, Rotimi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's great. So let me really delve into this topic because I'm so excited to talk about it. So, guys, as you know, my name is Ifama Odunlami. I'm an immigration attorney from the Odunlami Law Firm in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey. My law firm serves clients in all 50 states with humanitarian immigration, family based immigration, deportation hearings, and the like. So, if you need our assistance, feel free to call us 973 993 1900. So, I hope you guys in the Northeast are being safe. We had all this horrible weather, and so we're expecting another one next tomorrow. So if you show up if you're here, just say hello. Let me know that you're here. Awesome. Everybody can hear me loud and clear. Good, because I really have some good information today, and I want to make sure everyone can partake of this information. So a couple of weeks ago, in the past 2 weeks, I've had consultations with people who've been in the United States for over 20 years, and they have children who are US citizens who are over the age of 21. And these children should file for them, can file for them, but the American kids are unable to file for them, or they filed and they've been denied. And the reason is because the parent was found to have engaged in immigration fraud, which is a sham marriage, right? So I talk about this all the time, and I want to really go into details, the red flags, the things that USCIS sees that makes them think it's a sham marriage. And I don't agree with some of the decisions I've read that people who have been denied have brought to my office. Sometimes either they didn't have a lawyer that paid attention to the details, or they themselves didn't think it was a big deal. Like one of the people I talked to, she had come out of school, married her boyfriend. The boyfriend filed for her. The relationship didn't work out, and I think I think that they went for an interview, and young people, they didn't prepare, they didn't really care. It was like, what's the big deal? So they were denied, and then the relationship broke up. So when she was denied, she was given a 204C finding. So you guys write this down. 204C is what you should look for in any marriage-based case denial. If it's a 204C finding, or a finding that says you did not meet your burden of proof, you really want to challenge that, especially if you know it's a legit marriage. You need to appeal it, because the consequences of a finding of a sham marriage is severe. It's a permanent bar to a green card, and there are no waivers. All right. So the reason I'm having this conversation today is I want you guys to take your cases seriously. If you have an interview or you have a petition, take it seriously. What I mean by that is, have a reputable attorney file your case. There's some people that file their cases, I mean, if you want to, that's, good, but that's all well and good, but you want to make sure that you're doing your research, because if you fill out the form like you're filling out a job application, like, well, if I get it, good, if I don't, I don't, that could come to bite you. So you want to make sure that either you get a reputable attorney, an attorney that's not someone who files frivolous cases, because like I've said before, I've had clients who have come here, people who have retained me subsequently, that their cases were denied because an officer might have noted that the attorney that they used before was the one that was reputed for filing fake cases, or they go to the notarios or the so-called paralegals. A lot of times people don't even know that these paralegals are not attorneys. So the first thing you need to do is do your due diligence, do your homework, make sure you find the right person. And if you decide you want to file the paperwork yourself, make sure that you're really doing the homework to make sure that you're answering the questions. There's so many attorneys who are talking on social media, telling you what to look out for. So if that might be something you might want to listen to, I always recommend that people get an attorney. I don't, there are certain things that I don't do myself because I want an expert to do it, because I want to make sure that it's done right the first time. Same thing, I could do it myself if I took the time, but a lot of times I just want to make sure it's done right. That's the same way you should approach your immigration cases. So without further ado, let's talk about the red flags that USCIS sees in a case that makes them suspect that it could be a sham marriage. And when I mention these red flags, I'm not saying that your case is going to be denied, because I don't want people calling me saying, oh, I have 1, 2, 3 on your list. Is my case going to be denied? No, it's just a red flag. It just means that when USCIS sees your case, that if you have one or more of these red flags, it's going to warrant scrutiny. And if you, as the petitioner or the beneficiary, you meet your burden of proof, you're good. You have to convince the officer that it's a legit marriage. So let's go over some of the things that are red flags. And I have I made a list. I don't want to forget anything. I mean, this is not a complete list. This is just some of the things I've seen. So hi, Palton. Hi, Kuzwan. And hi, Abraham. Thank you, guys. And hi, people on Instagram and YouTube. So let's talk about, you have different addresses on your ID. So you have a driver's license, your spouse. This is what typically happens. You have a driver's license, you and your spouse, you move, you change yours. Your spouse does not, because nobody likes to go to DMV and spend all day there. So it's something that you just kind of, move to the back of the burner. And then you have an interview coming up, like in a week, and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to go make this right. So your spouse goes to DMV a week before your interview and changes the driver's license so that your address match. And USCIS looks at it and sees that you just got the driver's license changed, and that's a red flag. So it's a red flag if it's a different address. It's a red flag if you've just done it, because it looks like you did it in preparation for an interview, and it makes them suspicious. Now, does that mean you're going to be denied? No, it just means that it makes them suspicious. So you better come correct with all other evidence. All right. So what I recommend is, if you're in immigration proceedings, not immigration proceedings, like marriage-based petitions or any immigration matter, you need to be careful about your dates, where you lived, when you lived there. You need to be cognizant of this information. If you move, you want to change your address with DMV. You want to change your address with government authorities that need to know where you are. Of course, you need to change your address with USCIS. Fill out the AR11. That's actually the law. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, if USCIS sees that you guys live in separate residences, that's a red flag. And that's a red flag because you need to explain why you don't live together. And there are many explanations for that. People don't live together for 101 reasons. Could be one person is a student, the other person is working, or it's just not the right time. But if you don't live together, at the minimum, you have to show that you're visiting each other regularly, and you have to have a viable reason why you're not together, right? So I tell clients that if you're traveling, like if you're flying, of course, you want to have the itinerary. If you're driving, say from New York to New Jersey, and you're going through what you call Easy Pass because you're visiting your spouse on the weekends because maybe you have a job. The only job you could get was in New York, and you have to stay there Monday through Friday, but on Fridays you come back home. You want to have something to document that. Easy Pass is really an easy way to show that you're making that trip to and fro. That's just an example. All right, so let's talk about spouses that don't speak the same language. Now, that's a huge red flag because how do you communicate, right? So if you have a spouse who only speaks Spanish, speaks no word of English, and the other spouse speaks English and no word of Spanish, USCIS is going to want to know how you guys are communicating, right? And the funny thing is that they're bona fide marriages that people don't really speak, they communicate, they find their way, right? And I've heard about one of those kind of cases where this elderly couple, they pretty much just married to be together because, companionship, and they don't speak the same language, but for some reason, when USCIS was trying to ask questions and the spouse was not understanding, they could see that they had their form of communication. So, but I just have to tell you that's a red flag because it's really, it does look suspicious if you can't understand each other, So now let's talk about marriages where the family do not know each other. That is, you don't know, or marriages where the families don't know they're married. And this is just a red flag because I've had a case like that where the couple eloped. He was from Bangladesh, I think it was, and she was from I don't remember what country, Wisconsin, what state, Wisconsin, I think it was. And her parents did not approve of the marriage, didn't approve of him. They met in school because he was a Muslim, she's a Christian, and I think there was a race factor to it, and they didn't approve. So they eloped and didn't tell anybody. And so we filed a petition, and we had to come solid with all other evidence. And initially, they didn't even live together at that time because she was still in school. But there was a lot of communication, text messages back and forth. They were going on vacations together. They were, doing a lot of things together. There was no question that they were together, and there was no question that the reason they're not telling their parents at this time was because of the religious issue, the race issue, the fact that her parents would not have approved of the marriage. And subsequently, they were able to move in together, right? And were able to show that when it came to removing the conditions, So everything doesn't have to be, perfect because the law actually says that, USCIS cannot hold people to a higher standard than they would hold regular Americans. But I tell you this red flags just because, you're all looking for an immigration process that is not stressful. Immigration is stressful in itself. So any way you can make this process less stressful for yourself, you want to do it. So it's not that you cannot win a case with all the red flags in the world, but you really want to get your evidence, get as much evidence as you can. So if you're in a relationship where your parents don't know that you're married because you know that they won't approve, but it is a legitimate relationship, then you want to show that, text messages, I had a client that didn't have a lot of photographs, but on social media, they were all over the place in other people's albums. It was clear that they were a couple, even though it didn't occur to them to take pictures, which is another thing I don't understand. I mean, everybody has a cell phone. Take pictures, guys. Pictures of your day-to-day activity, not selfies. That's not as helpful, okay? So now let's talk of another big red flag. This is fake divorce documents. This is a big red flag for certain countries. In certain countries, there's a lot of fake legal documents. So when you come to USCIS and you produce certain documents, they go and they verify it, or sometimes they require you to authenticate that document. And one of the documents that we find is a huge problem is divorce decrees. So the scenario is somebody comes to the United States, maybe on a B1, B2, and they decide to get divorced from their spouse because they decide that they're going to stay here. So they have somebody in their country file a divorce, help them with a divorce, on their behalf. And the person either takes the money and does a horrible job, doesn't do it properly, and of course covers up by just giving them a decree, a divorce decree, and then they submit that to USCIS. Now, USCIS knows those countries that they cannot trust their legal documents. They typically can trust legal documents of people from UK, from Norway, but they're not trusting documents of people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from other countries. So they will check those documents, and if it's a fake divorce decree, that's a red flag for them. That maybe it's not a real marriage, maybe it's a fake marriage. And the unfortunate thing is that a lot of people don't even know that it's a fake divorce decree, because sometimes it's their spouse that divorced them, and then they're now in a position to marry somebody else, and they rely on the divorce decree that they were given by their former spouse. So my advice to people here is, if you are the one filing for a divorce and you're here, file the divorce from the United States so that you have an American divorce decree, which USCIS will not question, even though we've known them to question one or two, but it's easy to prove that, you go to the courthouse and get the divorce decree. And secondly, if your spouse, your former spouse, is the one divorcing you and you are ready to marry somebody else, authenticate that divorce decree. Make sure it's a valid divorce decree before you marry somebody else. So that's that for that. All right. So another red flag is when the U.S. citizen spouse is very poor, has a history of drugs, alcoholism, credit problems, bankrupt, unpaid child support, liens, judgment, bad credit history. This makes USCIS suspect that they got money to marry the immigrant spouse, because believe it or not, there are people out there transacting marriages. That is, you pay them, they marry you, so that you can get a green card. So USCIS is aware of that. And so they're looking at the person's situation. So, and, I've seen it myself, where you see somebody who's like very clean, has a great job, has, loads and loads of degrees, and is married to somebody who has a drug history, never completed college. It just kind of looks a little strange, like, are they even equally yoked? So that would make USCIS suspect that the main reason for this relationship is a transactional reason, which is to get a green card for the beneficiary and to get money for the US citizen. All right, makes sense, right? Now, let's talk about another red flag. The US citizen filed to get a green card for 2 or more people. So if you're married to somebody who is in the business of filing green cards for people, getting them green cards, and they just seem to always marry foreigners and always get them green cards, that's a red flag, So when you meet your forever love, ask them, have you ever filed a petition for anybody? And that's what I ask when I do consultations. Have you ever filed a petition for anybody? Has anybody ever filed a petition for you? That's why I ask the immigrants. So if you have a history of filing petitions, USCIS takes note of that. Like I said, does that mean that you will not get your green, or you will not get your spouse their green card? No, but they will take note of the fact that you filed previous petitions for people, and they will. I think one of the questions that will actually ask that, So let's talk about another red flag is you married very quickly after you met. So one of the questions that you must expect when you go for an interview is, how did you meet? How soon after you met did you get married? And it's very suspicious if you get married within, for me anyway, you tell me you showed up in the United States, you're married in next week, I'm not taking that case because it makes no sense unless you knew each other before and you've had a relationship before, but it's very suspicious for you to meet somebody and within a couple of weeks you're getting married to them, or even a couple of months. Of course, love at first sight, we know people do it, that Baywatch actress married her husband within, I think, in the weekend of meeting him. But that's Hollywood, okay? We're talking of real life in immigration world. That's a red flag, all right? All right, so let's talk about marrying very quickly after a prior divorce. Now, this I feel can be explained because people, like, when your relationship gets bad, it actually takes a while before you get the divorce. So you might have moved on maybe a year before and then finally got around to getting the divorce maybe a year after. And then, of course, at that time, you're with somebody else and you decide to get married right away. But you have to be able to explain it. It is a red flag, so you have to be able to explain it. All right. And then let's talk about those who get married while they're in immigration proceedings. And when I mean immigration proceedings, I mean when you are in deportation proceedings and then you get married. So USCIS is aware that you might be getting married so you can get away from, you can avoid being deported. And that is the reason why there's a requirement in your filing, in your I-130 filing, that you put in a statement of what's called a bona fide marriage exemption, where you must show by clear and convincing evidence that the marriage was entered into in good faith. Because if you're in deportation proceedings and you get married to a U.S. citizen, it is a way to get out of deportation proceedings. So be aware that there's a heightened standard of proof for people who get married when they're in deportation proceedings. And so let's talk about photographs. When you submit pictures of your life and you're submitting selfies or submitting pictures where it looks clearly staged, such as pictures where you're wearing the same outfit. All the pictures have you wearing the same outfit, and taking pictures where it just makes no sense. Like, I've seen pictures of people in a laundry room. Like, really, what about the laundry room makes you think this is a good place to take a picture? It's suspicious to me. Or, we saw pictures, somebody has sent us pictures, because there's some cases that you're like, is this a legitimate case, And you notice that even though they change their outfits, the things in the room remain the same, like nothing changes. So, I mean, of course, maybe they're not moving their things in their house, they're not cleaning up, but for me, that's really suspicious because, really everything just remains the same, like nothing moves, the table, same thing. We look out for all of that stuff, because we don't, we like for our clients to be legitimate as well, okay? We don't want to have a reputation of filing fake documents. So, selfies, not helpful. What is helpful is taking pictures showing your life, showing you and your spouse with other people, with, doing fun things, holding yourself out to the public to be a couple. And another thing that's a red flag is when you're married to somebody who has children, especially if the US citizen has children, but the kids don't live with you. That's a red flag because it suggests that you're not really together with your family, right? And it suggests that it's a transactional relationship. So now, if you have a really good reason, like for instance, the child lives with their father or their other parent, And that's a great reason, because that happens. But if your child is living with grandma and previously you lived with grandma too, and then you move and then you leave your kid behind, I don't know. That just kind of feels weird to me. I mean, but doesn't mean that people don't decide that that's what they're going to do. Maybe the school system is better somewhere else. There are many reasons. Like I say, the red flags are just for you to explain the issues. The red flags will get your case noticed. It will get an officer to scrutinize. But ultimately, if you explain the reasons, then you meet your burden of proof. And then bona fides, joint legal documents. If your lease agreement is fake, huge red flag. And that's a big problem too, because now you have a misrepresentation or fraud issue. So you want to make sure that you're not submitting fake leases, okay? If you're living with somebody and maybe you're renting a space, maybe the person you're renting from can send a letter, like a landlord saying this person lives with me and this is how much they pay, and show whatever, because USCIS will track that person down and ask questions. They've been known to do that. So when you have people writing affidavits for you, don't assume that USCIS is going to rely on the affidavits. Sometimes they will call the people who wrote the affidavits to ask them questions about what they put in the affidavit, okay? So now another thing that is a red flag is spouses that have work schedules where they don't even see each other. So somebody's working days and another person's working nights. So it's like, when do you guys have time to see your significant other? Now that's red flag that makes no sense to me, because honestly, America, people, immigrants don't come here to play. We come here to make, you leave your country to come somewhere that you don't know anybody. You're looking to succeed. You're looking to make money. And some people are making money to send back home. So sometimes it requires you taking a job that nobody else wants to take, which is maybe working nights, working odd shifts, and your spouse is working a regular job. So I don't know. You just have to be able to explain that, this is the way it is, but we get together on the weekends. We hang out at this time, but you have to show that you have a relationship, And then another one that I've noticed is when you have a couple who are of childbearing age and they have no kids. This is not a fair red flag, but it is what it is. They've been together 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, no kids, and they're both young enough to have children. And, so it seems that maybe they're together until they get a green card, but they're not trying to bring children into the world. So, like I said, it's just a red flag. So just bump up your other bona fides, because some people don't want to have kids. USCIS, some people don't want to have kids, okay? But it gives them, they look at your case again, a second look, if they feel that this is a couple of childbearing age, been together for a while, no child, what's going on, whatever. And then you travel, you take big trips, but not with each other, That's a red flag, because that's your spouse. How come you're not doing things together? How come you're not traveling together? So now, a huge age difference is a red flag, but it's a surmountable red flag, because we've won cases where there was a huge age difference. And like I say, typically, if the man is older and the woman is younger, it's not as big a red flag, unfortunately. But if you have a younger woman, an older woman, and a younger man, it's more of a red flag, because I think partially because immigrants from certain countries tend not to marry women older than them in their own country. It's not their thing. So when they come here and they're marrying people who are 15, 20, women who are 15, 20 years older than them, it's sus, as my kids will say. It's sus. So let's talk about arrest or convictions for either spouse. USCIS will look at that case again. And you guys know, let me add this. If your US citizen spouse has been arrested for a sex crime against a minor, they cannot file for you. Okay? That's something you need to know. So you want to make sure that they have no sex convictions against minors because they, I think it's the Adam Walsh Act. So Google it if you don't know that, Adam Walsh Act, okay? They cannot file for you without proving certain things, and it's so hard to win those cases. So if your spouse has molested a child, dump him. He's not a good person. Anyways. Now, another thing is when you go for an interview and they ask you questions about your spouse's kids and you don't know anything about their kids, where they go to school, or your US citizen spouse cannot pronounce your name, cannot spell your name, cannot talk about your children's names, has no information whatsoever about your extended family, that's a red flag. I mean, that's a red flag that can be overcome as well, of course, because some people are just not close to their family. But those are the things that you need to look out for. So I'm going to ask a couple questions and I'm going to head out because let's see. Let's see. Kaswan says, we love you too, Kaswan. And then Miss Elaine says, I'm trying to get security clearance, but I'm still living at home with parents. My husband is living elsewhere, and I put that on my application for the security clearance. Okay, I'm not sure if that's a question, Miss Elaine. However, on USCIS, we find that we live together. Will USCIS find that we put the application for my clearance? They probably may, because if you're putting a different, this is one way that USCIS will get you when you have different information in different places. So it's always a good idea to just say the truth and explain your situation. Say, my husband lives somewhere else. I live with my parents. The reason we haven't moved in together is because of this, but we intend to move together at this date. It's better than being caught in a lie, because when you fill out those forms, you are certifying that you're telling the truth. And if you're caught lying, that's a problem. So Jeffrey says, I'm in the United States and I want to apply for SIJ. Jeffrey, call our office. That's something that we do a lot of. 973-993-1900 would like to help you. And then Cassiana says, if one has gone for marriage-based interview and the children under 21 years were not invited for the interview, it's only the parent. Is that a red flag? I can't really say it is or it's not, because it depends on how the petition was filed. If you filed a separate petition for each child as they're supposed to, they may not invite all of you for the interview, and they just may. I don't know that it's a red flag. Typically, they invite parents and children together, but I can't really call that a red flag. I haven't experienced that. So Cassiana says, how long does it take after the marriage-based interview for them to get back? So Cassiana, that's a great question, because sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes 2 years, 3 years. When it takes a long time, it tells me that there's an issue, right? And sometimes it could be that they're doing fraud background searches. They're trying to authenticate prior divorce decrees. And what I always say is, you can, file a writ of mandamus if your case is taking too long. We've won cases where we filed a writ of mandamus because it was taking too long. Sometimes USCIS just didn't get to it. But I personally, when I see a case that has been on for a long time after an interview, it always makes me think there's something going on. And then we begin to inquire. We do an e-inquiry, ask them what's going on. We ask our clients to do a congressional assistance request from a congressman. And if none of this work, which they typically don't, we file a writ of mandamus, sue the government, okay? And of course, when you sue them, they're not promised, you're not suing them because the court is going to get them to approve your petition. The court is going to get them to respond and make a decision, all right? So Agnes says, how long does it take for a green card holder daughter to apply for the parent? Agnes, a green card holder cannot apply for their parents. Only US citizens can apply for their parents, okay? Now I'm going to answer a couple of questions on Instagram, and then I'm going to head out. So Bry Star says, I came to the US with a student visa but didn't complete my studies. Now I have a pending adjustment of status and an advanced parole. Can I travel in and out the US without having issues with CBP? Oh, Brian, that's a great question. So I always tell you guys this: advanced parole does not mean that you're going to be let back in. If you have certain inadmissibilities, you may not be allowed to come back in. Now, just because you didn't complete your studies does not mean that your advanced parole will, you'll be prevented from coming in, right? However, you want to make sure that you don't have any other issues of misrepresentation or fraud, so, it's something you should actually talk to an attorney too, and so that they can get your full details and determine what the risk factor is for you. All right. Let's see. Okay, I'm just scrolling down looking for questions. I don't see any questions on Instagram. Somebody asked a question about moving their band from Canada. Well, moving your band from Canada, you would have to file for the right document to be able to come to the United States. If you are moving your band because you have to play here, there's certain visas for that. If you're trying to get an immigrant visa because you are a person that has a special skill, there's certain visas for that. So you really want to talk to an attorney because it's not really clear what you're asking. But whatever you want to do, you really should talk to an attorney, because this live is not a consultation. I'm answering questions based on generalities. There's no attorney-client privilege. There's no, I don't know your story, so it's not legal advice, so to speak. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just giving information which may differ depending on the context. All right. So I think that's it, guys. It was a pleasure hanging out with you guys today, and I will come again next week. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. Please feel free to put the question on the comment section. I will review it and I will try to answer it when I get on live next time. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.